to all of my lovelies and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Addison Taylor. This is Higher Self Tarot, my home where I post pick a card readings, and sometimes I do videos like these. This is a part of my series called Bible Story and Tarot, where we discuss a interesting character from the Bible or a story from the Bible that's been kind of on my mind. We learn about it together, and then at the end we have a pick a card reading where you can discover kind of how this story from the Bible applies to your life, or what message God wants to send to you specifically through the story or the person that we are talking about. Now, in today's video, we will be discussing Job. So Job was one of the first characters of the Bible, or people in the Bible, that I became really familiar with, like fully with the entire story, because when I was 8 years old, my dad, who has worked in Christian churches my entire life, he kind of wanted, I think he was wanting to do like a Bible study thing with me. Maybe he was planning on making it like a weekly thing, but this was the one and only time that we did it, and I think it was because of my reaction. So Job is one of his favorite stories. So I'm 8 years old, and he's like, okay, I'm going to read this entire story through to you from beginning to end, and then we will discuss. Well, by the end of this story, which you'll see why as we go over it, I was in a panic attack and just bawling my eyes out. I mean, I was in so much shock of this story. Up until that point, I would go to Sunday school and, we'd talk about how Jesus loves us and Mary was the mommy to baby Jesus. And like, these are kind of lighter topics, and I was just like, what? I mean, it like shook my world. So you'll see why. It's always been a story that's really stuck in my mind, and every once in a while it's popped back up for me to kind of revisit and maybe reinterpret or try to understand it. But it does have a really good meaning behind it. But it does take some dissecting as well. So we'll discuss all of that after I kind of give the overview. Something else that I want to touch upon in this story is kind of how I relate, or at least now, how I relate a lot of the events and the people in the story to astrology, because I do think there's a strong astrological symbolism to all of this as well. So anyways, I'm really excited to get into this. Get yourself comfortable. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I'd love to see you for future Bible story and tarot pick a card readings. And so let's talk about Job. Okay, so Job is actually a man who was studied in the Christian religion as well as the Jewish and the Muslim religion as well. And he's actually considered a prophet by Muslims and by Christians as well. But so he's kind of one of the unifiers between these three major religions in the world. And in each of these religions, there's slight variations to the story and to the interpretation. For today's story, I'm going to be using what I've learned from the Bible, from the Christian religion. Now, some people, there's two camps of people with the Job story, and I think this applies to a lot of biblical or religious stories, maybe from any religion that you'd look at in the world. But there's some people who take this story as very literally, like, no, this is historical, all of this actually happened in just the way that it's being told. And then there's camps of people who say, no, this is more of a symbolic, metaphorical story that God brought to us to help us understand his teachings. But this didn't actually happen, or it didn't happen quite this way. So as you listen to the story of Job's life, take it in whichever way resonates. I myself happen to fall into the camp of people that believes that this story is more of a metaphor and more symbolic. I do actually believe that Job was a real person, but some of the dialogue that you'll see between God and Job and God and Satan, I feel like that was kind of all this symbolism and metaphorical description of what was going on and why. Now, the reason that I think Job has been on my mind lately and why I felt called to do a video on this topic is because the story of Job is still very relevant today, and especially after what we experienced in 2020, I feel like it's extremely relevant, and everyone can really resonate with this story, because Job is essentially about, the sufferings of man that we're sometimes put through, and there's no reason why we can't understand why, and where does God come into play with all of this. And this kind of touches on another reason why I believe that the story of Job can be very symbolic for the astrological powers that be, and how God is kind of how God uses the power of the constellations and the planets to put us through different trials and tests in order to sharpen our soul and in order for us to gain wisdom. Now, in my opinion, and I'd like to know yours down below after we get through the story, but I think Job is a great representation astrologically of North Node in Scorpio and South Node in Taurus, or North Node in the 8th house and South Node in the 2nd. I also think it's a great representation of Saturn-Pluto conjunctions, which is what we experienced in 2020. And Saturn-Pluto conjunctions happen every 35 years. And then, of course, the North Node goes into Scorpio every 18 to 24 years. So we kind of experience the story of Job collectively and individually through these cycles astrologically to kind of sharpen us. And the reason that I feel like North Node Scorpio really resonates with the story of Job is because North Node in Scorpio is really about death and rebirth, like completely transforming, but through deep suffering and loss and introspection. It's also about letting go of all of the material things, the things that we can no longer take with us once we've passed on, and leaving the value of the material behind and instead searching for the value in the spiritual. And that's exactly what Job represents. So if you have this in your chart, North Node Scorpio or North Node 8th house, let me know at the end if you feel like you resonate at all with the story of Job. Now, in relating the story of Job to the Saturn Capricorn conjunction that occurs every 35 years. And you'll notice if you go back through history or if you keep up with astrology, every time that Saturn and Pluto come conjunct, there's always some sort of major structure that's kind of blown apart or taken down, whether it's like something economical or, we see people ripped out of power during the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, people that we thought no one could ever touch or mess with, systems that we thought were perfect, maybe a bit old-fashioned, but still very, well-run. It's like secrets come out, things are exposed, and these big organizations, these big structures, traditions that have stood the test of time, which is kind of all the things that Saturn represents, Pluto comes in and just knocks it all down. And then we have to rebuild. And so it's similar to the story of Job in that Job had this very well-structured life, everything that he had built so much up to this certain point in his life, his estate, his finances, his family, like these very Saturnian sort of concepts. And then Pluto comes in, which Pluto to me is the referred to as the devil in the Bible. And I wouldn't say that the devil is unanimously associated with Pluto, not at all, but just in this particular story, I feel that there is a deep symbolism with Pluto and Satan, or Pluto and the devil, and this deal that they're making with God. But Pluto comes in to kind of blow all that up, take it all away, and really force Job to transform through his own pain and suffering into someone that he never would have been capable of becoming without the trials and the suffering that he experienced. Okay, so in the opening of the book of Job, there's kind of this whole paragraph that's basically just setting up who Job is as a person. And, we discover that he's an extremely good person and that he's blessed by God and God loves him and he stays away from evil and he focuses on how he can do good for others and for his family and for God. And because he's lived his life with such a moral integrity, such a great moral compass, God has kind of allowed blessings to come into his life. So he has this beautiful large family and a lot of farmland and cattle and like all the food, all the money, anything he could ever need. And it's kind of suggested in the prelude to his story that the reason his life is so good is because he has consistently been a good person his entire life. So with each good deed he does, he receives a good deed. And because he's never done anything evil or wrong, he's never had to receive punishment for that. So we start out learning about Job as kind of this perfect person who, because of his perfection, hasn't experienced any real suffering or loss in his life. It has been common throughout history to associate people who have problems in their life with being lesser than or distanced from God, as if they're being punished by God for their evil or sinful nature. This story opens with that same implication. Job has always been good, therefore his life has always been good. and then attempts to challenge that very idea, as you'll see here shortly, proving that instead no person, no matter how quote unquote good, is exempt from the natural ups and downs of life. We are all here to experience the totality of existence, which inevitably includes losing those we love to death, financial stressors, health issues, struggles in our relationships, and more. Of course, life isn't all bad. It has many good things as well, but Job is a reflection on the bad aspects of living, and I say bad in quotations, and asks you if you're capable of seeing these quote unquote bad things from a spiritual perspective instead. Because opportunities to build our character, moral compass, integrity, and strength, these are all things associated with our spiritual growth. All of these things are scattered around these bad moments that life can sometimes bring us. So while we may lose materially, we gain spiritually. So God is just enamored with Job and loves Job, and he's just in awe, just watching him like, oh, my good little boy, you know. And one day, Satan appears to God, which to me, Satan is a metaphor here for Pluto and kind of what Pluto's job is in our life, which is to force us to lose and let go of things. Or comes in and explodes things so that we can transform from it. But Pluto is a very dark energy, and Pluto is known, I think, in Greek mythology or Roman mythology. I can't remember which name Pluto is used in, but he is the god of death. You know, he's Hades. He's the god of the underworld. So all these associations go along with Pluto. So in my mind, Pluto is kind of Satan in this story, or Satan is Pluto. But so Satan, or Pluto, you know, appears to God and says,
I don't know why you're so enamored with Job. Like, of course he adores you and loves you, and of course he's a good guy because he's had a really good life. Like, if he was suffering, he wouldn't be so into you. He wouldn't be praying to you if he had this crappy life. But yeah, like, what person is going to curse God or go against God when they've had this easy, amazing, blessed life?
and so he's kind of like, you know, I don't know, trying to start something with God, I guess. And God's like,
No, that's not true. I know Job's character, and he's really good, and he doesn't need to go through, suffering in order to prove, in order for me to believe that he's a good person and that he loves me and he loves doing good in the world.
and Satan's like,
I don't know, God. Come on. You really think that, if some terrible stuff just started happening, if he didn't have his money or he didn't have his kids, you really don't think that he would start to doubt you and doubt whether doing good deeds was the right way to go? Like, come on, come on.
and God's like,
Oh, Satan, no, there's no way. Like Job is just this, he's my baby. I love him.
kind of thing, you know. Well, eventually, Satan's like,
Okay, if you really think you're right, then okay, you really think that you're right on this, then there should be no risk in making a deal with me, a bet, let's say.
God's like,
Okay, what kind of bet are you talking about here?
and Satan's like,
Well, I wanna make a bet that if you allow me to, you gotta allow me to, but if you allow me to go down into Job's life and just start destroying stuff, okay? I bet you that he will start doubting you and doubting his faith and doubting your goodness and doubting that you're a just God, and he will pull away from you for sure. That's what I want to bet. Let me go down there and destroy his life, and then we'll see, how special he thinks you are or how much he praises you or worships you.
and God's like,
Okay, fine. Well, I'll make that bet because I believe in my Job, and I don't see him straying from me, even if you were to cause destruction in his life.
now, obviously, the story reads this way, and especially when I heard the story at 8 years old, I'm thinking,
Why is God even talking to Satan? And why is he going to make a deal with Satan and allow Satan to do these horrible things to Job? This makes no sense.
but in my mind now, as an adult reading back through this story, this all seems quite metaphorical to me, especially once I kind of learned more about astrology and how it works. You know, God is not Saturn or Pluto or Neptune or Mars or any of those things. God was the creator of these planets, but these planets serve a purpose for God, which is to put us through tests and trials and new and different circumstances in order to sharpen our soul, in order to kind of, make us the diamond instead of the diamond in the rough. And so that's kind of, Satan to me is kind of playing the role of Pluto here. And although God's not, God's not Pluto himself and God's not Saturn, but God created these different planetary energies with their own individual sorts of powers, I guess you could say, that are serving God in the sense that they are putting us through these different and new circumstances. And sometimes it's great things that we get from these planetary energies, and sometimes it's like really awful, crappy stuff that's hard to deal with. But all of it is serving the purpose of making us better and stronger human beings. Back to the story. So God agrees to, he's like,
Okay, Satan, go ahead and do your thing. And, I have full faith that I'm going to win this bet.
and Satan's like,
No, I'm definitely going to win this bet. You will see.
so Satan enters Job's life, I guess. I mean, Job doesn't actually see Satan in the story, but in the course of one day, Satan causes Job to lose like all of his money, like all of his livestock. He receives like 4 letters in the same day, like from his servants bringing him letters. And every letter's like, oh, there was a fire to all of your crops. And oh, something came and killed every one of your cows. And he even loses his children. Satan really like, he runs Job's life amok. But so he kills his children and then he hops back up into the sky. And I guess you could imagine that God and Satan are kind of like popping popcorn and just kind of watching to see what Job does. Sounds so cruel, but metaphorically, we'll get to it. You'll understand at the end. So anyways, Satan and God are kind of hanging out and they're like, okay, Job's lost all of his money and he's lost his kids. Let's see who's going to win the bet. Let's see how Job reacts. And Job is, of course, like just completely devastated. I mean, as you can imagine, all of his children and everything that he had worked for just ripped away. I mean, he's devastated. He's upset. But not once during his devastation or while he's crying does he curse God or even question God. He's not saying like, why God, I don't deserve this. He's not saying anything like that. He's just sad and he's saying things that allude to, I guess it's God's will. I don't understand, but I guess it's God's will. So he kind of proves that he's still very loyal to who he believes God is, and he's humble in the sense that he's not demanding answers or demanding understanding from all of this. So, God's looking over at Satan like,
Yes, I won that bet.
and Satan's like,
No. Okay. The bet's not over yet. All right. I forgot. There was a few things I forgot to do. So let me go back down there and finish up, and then you'll see I'm going to win the bet.
God's like,
What are you talking about?
he's like,
I bet you, if I do something to his health, he will rebuke you, and then he will be angry with you. I bet you anything.
so God's like,
Okay, fine. Go do whatever else you have to do. But then the bet's done. We'll see who wins.
so Satan goes back down to Job and he gives him some sort of like, I think it's an STD, to be honest. It's something that causes like these boils all over his skin, but I think even down in that area, because in some interpretations of Job, it's believed that his wife, when he shows her what's come of him and this illness that he has, this disease, she questions his faithfulness. Like it's almost like she's suggesting like,
Did you cheat on me?
like thinking that he caught this from another woman. That's one interpretation. The other is that she is questioning like,
You've obviously done some really bad things that maybe you've never told me about because God is clearly cursing you or giving you the karma that you deserve, right? So what have you not told me?
either way, he's losing his relationship with his wife as well, on top of what he's dealing with in his body, because his wife is either questioning his faithfulness as a husband, or she's questioning his integrity and who he is. She's starting to doubt, like, if he's really the man that she thought he was all along. So now he's just completely even more devastated than he thought he had reached the pits of despair after losing his kids and his wealth. But now you add on top of that something really wrong with his body, and his wife even questioning, I think, whether or not she wants to be with him, basically. And you have to remember, back in this time period, people with diseases or deformities, they were extremely discriminated against, looked down upon, because people did have this association a long time ago that if you had some sort of disease or deformity, it's because you were cursed by God, because God doesn't like you. And so, I want to stay away from that because God must not like you. So that just adds another layer to what already sounds horrible, even if this was happening in 2021. So he is completely upset, of course, but he's still, Satan pops back up into heaven and they're eating their popcorn and kind of looking down from below like, okay, what's Job going to do? Who won the bet? And it sounds so morbid when I put it that way, but I have to keep it light, because the story is truly so sad. Okay, so they're watching him from above, and he's sad and he's crying, but he's still not cursing God. He's not demanding answers. He's not angry with God. And, Satan's getting kind of ticked off, but he's like,
No, you just gotta wait. You gotta give it more time, okay? The bet's not done yet, so we can't decide yet who won. We just need to let it all play out now. So let's just keep watching up here, basically.
Eventually, 3 of Job's friends appear to him because I think they've heard about kind of the loss and they want to check up on him and see what's going on. And these 3 friends to me kind of represent air energy, so Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius energy, because his friends enter the room with Job and immediately start trying to use logic and their mental faculties to kind of solve this equation or create understanding for what's happening. In their mind, if we just keep looking at it logically, we'll figure out why this is happening. And so as the story goes in Job, it kind of turns into like poetry. It's almost like his friends are talking to him poetically, and it goes back and forth in this big long poem. But it's just them constantly saying, well, okay, you're saying that you're a good man, right, Job? And Job's like, yes, I'm a good man. I haven't done anything bad to deserve this. And so then they're like, okay, well then if you're good and you really didn't do anything bad to deserve this, then I think that we can infer that God is not just and God is very unfair, and maybe you shouldn't be so faithful to this God, right? And Job's like, no, I'm not listening to that. And so then they're like, okay, well, maybe you think that you're a good person, but you must not actually be, because if you're saying that your God is fair and your God is just, then the only way for him to be fair and just and for you to have all these horrible things happen to you is if you actually are a bad person and you're just not admitting it. So you must be a bad person, Job. That's got to be it. So they're using like this air energy of logic and negotiation to make sense of this. And Job's like, no, I'm not a bad person. I know that I'm not a bad person. I haven't done anything bad. And it just keeps going back and forth. It goes on and on and on because the friends are determined if they can just use the strength of their minds, then they will solve this and they will find the answers that they seek. And to me, the friends are not only symbolic for like air energy in our lives, because Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, it represents this air energy, which is all about our thinking, our logic, what we can learn, like facts. It's all about the emotional detachment and really like looking at things logically and coming up with answers. But people who are mentally insane or deal with mental illness, that mental insanity and that mental illness is caused by the mind, the very thing that is connected to this air energy. So a lot of times when we are too focused on the logic and the mind and the air energy, it can drive us to insanity. And while we can use our mind to get answers to certain things in life, certain data, certain facts, there are certain areas of life where the mind and the overthinking doesn't really belong. It doesn't really serve us. And I think that Job's friends in this situation could also even serve as metaphors for what's going on in his own mind. Perhaps these friends of Job aren't real people, but perhaps this is a dialogue between Job and himself in his mind, this back and forth, because don't we all do that in our own head when we're trying to make sense of something? We'll go back and forth. Well, maybe it could be this. No, it can't be that. Okay, well, maybe it's this. No, it can't be that. And this back and forth. So that's kind of what it represents to me. And I think, everything that happened to Job in such a short time could have definitely even pushed him to the brink of insanity. He could be in a psychotic episode of some sort. All that, makes sense. But you can take it either way, either metaphorically or, these are his actual friends. Well, Job eventually is like, will you guys please just go away? Like, you're not helping. I'm not going to admit that I'm a bad guy, because I'm not. And I'm also not going to admit that God is unjust or unfair, because he's not. And so just stop it. You guys are no help. I wish I wouldn't have opened up to you. Just go away. And a 4th friend eventually enters the room. And this 4th friend, he's different from the air guys, like I like to call them, the Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. He disagrees with the logic that they're trying to use to solve the whys of Job's life. And he instead, talks about, that he says things like,
who are we to question who God is?
And the stuff he says does make a little more sense than what the 3 previous friends were saying. But there's still errors in all of it. And all 4 of these men's dialogue, you'll find things that they say that you're like, yeah, that makes sense. That's true. And then there's other things that they'll say that you're like, no, it's not quite right, which I think was just to show that there is no human that can perfectly explain how God operates. Like, we can get some things right, but we're inevitably going to get some things wrong because we can't really understand it. But he starts talking to Job, is wanting to find God. He's like, I just need to talk to God myself. Like, talking to my friends isn't helping. And because Job at this point is like, you guys just go away. I want to talk to God. I want to get answers from God. God, where are you? Please, I want to talk to you. Well, eventually, I guess God was getting sick of kind of watching this back and forth go on between Job and his friends. And so he eventually enters the room. He does enter the room a bit irritated. I mean, he's irritated at Job's friends, I guess, for thinking that they could solve this and figure this out, and for accusing God of being unjust or accusing Job of being a bad person, because both are untrue. And of course, he doesn't really allow, the question never gets answered of, God, why did you do this? Oh, this is why, I made a deal with Satan, or that, and this is why this is all happening. That never happens. Instead, God enters the room and immediately starts asking these rhetorical questions to Job. Like,
do you know, how long it took to build the oceans? Do you know?
And Job's like, no. And then he's like,
do you know how many stars scatter the universe?
And Job's like, no. And God's like,
can you understand or explain how I created the body of this creature?
And Job's like, no. So the more questions that he asks, the more it's kind of making a point to Job, like,
you don't understand any of these things. And so how could you possibly ever come to an understanding of why I allowed this to happen to you?
It's almost like God saying, even if I tried to explain it to you, it's not going to make sense. And in some versions of the story, while God is asking him these questions, he's literally taking Job with him on a tour of like the galaxies, and even shows him like a couple of crazy looking dragony creatures that he's created. I don't know if they live on Earth or some other planet. But so Job at the end of the conversation is just left feeling like, whoa, there is like, it's so much bigger and more complex than I ever could have thought. And yeah, there's no way I could ever understand why any of this has happened. Now, a lot of people wonder, like,
why didn't God just tell Job that the reason he was going through all of these trials was because God just willy-nilly decided to make a bet with Satan and just sit back and watch?
And I think it's because that wasn't the true reason why any of this was happening. To me, especially if you're looking at it from an astrological perspective, and we're going to say that Satan is Pluto in our chart. When Pluto enters into a new house of our chart, let's say it enters into our 8th house, which is kind of what I think was going on with Job, or the North Node goes into the 8th house, let's say. Once Pluto and the North Node enter that 8th house of our chart, God is basically giving that planet permission to enter that house and do with it what it needs in order to make us a better person. And so in my mind, that's kind of what was happening. Not an actual like Satan coming up and chit-chatting with God, but God created all of these planets. Each planet is in charge of a certain area or theme of our life, and they are there to reward us and to punish us, and to ultimately strengthen our soul at the end of our lifetime. And Pluto, we have some really positive planets, like Jupiter is, all about blessings and expansion and abundance, and Venus is all about love and pleasures. But then we have some more difficult planets like Pluto and like Saturn. But all of the planets, whether we view them as good or bad, which is very tempting and easy for us to do as humans and in our human experience, from God's perspective, all of these planets are still serving his purpose and our ultimate purpose as well, which is to become the best, most wise kind-hearted, people we can become. And so that's kind of how I envision the conversation with God and Satan going. It was time for Satan or for Pluto to enter this new house in Job's chart, and God allowed it to enter, as he does with all of us, and hopes and believes the best in us as well. Believes that we will get through the trials and the suffering of whatever life brings us and still return to him and still come to understand that we will never understand, and that's okay. Another thing in Job's story, which further proves this theory to me, is when Job is at his worst and really suffering, his friends kind of point out, like, you've always thought that you've been able to empathize with others who were in their own state of suffering, but you actually never have been able to. Only now are you really feeling what other people in your life have felt before, because you've never had any trials or suffering. So we can then kind of presuppose or assume that, these trials that Satan is bringing, or we're going to say that Pluto has brought to Job, or the North Node, it could be a North Node thing as well, is to instill more experience into him as a person and to deepen his heart and his compassion and his empathy, because you really haven't learned much in your lifetime if you've lived an entire life without a single bout of suffering or loss. And even though it's horrible to go through grief and pain and trauma, like, it's so horrible. If someone was to ask you, like, what are the moments in your life that really defined you? I bet I know I would answer things that are usually connected to pain and suffering and transformation. Those are the moments that really carved who I was and transformed me into something new or sent me up to the next level. Not the fun moments of pleasure and happiness and joy, but the moments where it was like, oh, this sucks and I've got to step up to the plate. Or, oh my gosh, I understand now what it feels to have a broken heart or to lose somebody. Those are the moments that make us who we are. And so even though in Job's mind, he was losing everything, he was only losing the material, because in his spiritual being, which is what really matters, we can't take these material things with us when we die. Those just get left behind. The kids, the house, the money, that all stays down there. Even the body, that stays down there. Our spiritual self, our soul, is what is immortal and we take with us. So during his trials and suffering, he was losing a lot of material, which was what he was focused on, but he was actually gaining a ton spiritually, right? Which is the perspective God could see it through. But we as humans, we look at Job's story and think, no, he's just losing everything, right? Because to us, material things, earthly, tangible things, those are everything. It's really hard as a human to read Job's story and during the story be thinking, wow, he's gaining so much spiritually. Look at how much God is giving him spiritually through all of this, and get excited for him, right? Like, no, it sounds horrible, but that's actually what's happening. And that's kind of the beauty of the story of Job. And it's also why I relate it to that North Node in Scorpio sort of energy, or the North Node in the 8th house, because that is about completely detaching from valuing the material and instead valuing the spiritual, and understanding that in order to upgrade ourselves spiritually, we have to fully experience life. Not just the blessings life can bring, but the really crappy, dark, horrible things that life can bring as well. So I think Job is really a story of, astrology and why God laid out the constellations and the planets in the way that he did, and what kind of greater purpose these things serve. It's also a reminder that we need to always value the spiritual as much as the physical, or maybe even more, than the physical material things in our life. Because if you're reading the story of Job that way, you can actually be really excited and proud of him for what he's kind of gaining through this experience. He left that experience and that trial and that suffering a better man, a more experienced man, a wiser man, a stronger man, a more powerful man, and a more compassionate and empathetic man. He never would have gained all of those things that I just listed without that experience. So it's almost like, thank God he went through that. Of course, you have to look at it from a detached perspective to view it that way, and it's hard as a human to view it that way, but that's the truth, and that's what goes on in our lives every single day, right? I mean, the pain of 2020 for so many people. We had that Saturn-Pluto conjunction. North Node right now, I think, is entered into Scorpio, yeah, in tropical astrology. And so we're going to be, going through this same thing. And if we get stuck on trying to understand why, or if we get stuck on whether or not it's fair, whether or not, we're a good person, so we don't deserve this, so this doesn't make sense, so now I'm angry. Or if we get stuck on, only valuing the things that you own, or, these sort of earthly things, it's really going to weigh us down. Whereas if we can try and be more like Job and keep an understanding that even when things feel really horrible, it's still working in our favor. It's still all working for the greater good of who we are going to become, and in God's master plan that we'll never even fully comprehend. It makes it a little bit easier to push through. So Job, to me, is, he's 2020 in a nutshell, and hopefully 2021 is maybe like the part of the story where God replenishes everything threefold. We'll have to see. So in the next part of this video, I'm going to flash 3 piles, and I want you to pick a pile for yourself. And in the pile that you choose, God's going to open up and talk to you about how he thinks the story of Job applies to you specifically, or what he really wants to point out or for you to focus on. Maybe some things to come this year and how it ties into the story of Job for your life. So let's go ahead and take a look at those, and I'll meet you at your piles. Love you. Hi, Group 1, and welcome to your part of the reading. I can't wait to see what God wants to point out to you about the story of Job and how you can soak this in and apply its lessons in your life. So let's start by taking a look at the tarot cards. Okay, we have the Hermit card, which is Virgo energy, 6 of Pentacles, 6 of Swords, okay, 2 6s here, the Devil, so Capricorn energy, as well as Queen of Wands. This is fire energy, so Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Okay, so it looks like you all are on a journey of solitude. You're in a journey where you need to do soul searching. You need to focus on yourself. God's wanting to remind you of the part of the story in Job where his friends kind of enter the picture, and Job probably thought at first, okay, good, I need to see what my friends think. Maybe they can give me some answers. And it's like the more his friends talk, like the more just confused and frustrated Job gets, because sometimes our friends and our family can be helpful, and their advice can be helpful depending on the situation. And sometimes God's calling on us to look within, in our own solitude and our own prayer with him, to come to our conclusions and to find the answers that we seek. And in this case, with the Hermit card, that's what God is asking of you, to remember that advice can be good sometimes, but there are times where you don't need it, and you can find that advice for yourself. So with both of these 6s, 6 is a Venus number, and it's a number of, Venus is all about our values and our pleasures, and it's also a very harmonious number about balance. And there's definitely a balancing between your mental energies here with the swords and your material energies with the pentacles. And there needs to be something needs to be left behind, at least mentally, because you'll notice in the 6 of Swords, these people have hopped on a boat. They're escaping wherever they came from. They don't want to be there anymore. There's too much torment there, too much devastation. And so they're like, we've got to go. I've got to stop thinking about this. I've got to get it out of my head, and I've got to move forward. So there's some sort of opportunity, I feel like, that you're meant to receive from God that's supposed to help pull you into something new, because it looks like perhaps your phase of Job has been through it's due to kind of the environment and things that you are in, not necessarily because of a test or a trial that God's wanting to put you through to strengthen you, exactly like Job, but it's more like God's coming through and saying, look, you relate to Job's story so much because that kind of is the situation that you're in. But to solve it, you need to pull away. You need to walk away. And so the lesson for you is in learning when to leave something, when you can decide for yourself that it's time to go, when you can decide for yourself that maybe your environment is toxic or not healthy for you, or not going to get you to where you need to be. So this whole thing is all about remembering the strength of Job's character and the strength of Job's relationship with God. If Job had not had the faith that he had, if he had not developed this strength within himself of prayer, of soul searching, of knowing that he's a good person and doing the right things, making those decisions for himself, like he knew right from wrong. He didn't need to go to anybody else. He may have fallen apart when the trials and suffering came. He may have listened to what his friends had to say and taken it as truth when it absolutely was not. So you're learning to develop your own faith and your own inner strength to say, I've got to walk away from this. I don't agree with that advice. I don't think these relationships are healthy for me. And you're ultimately walking towards your throne, your crown. And the Queen of Wands, she's so happy. She's so vivacious. She's so playful and energetic and fun. And none of these other cards before it feel that way at all. And I also want to point out the Devil card, which represents toxicity in our lives, or some sort of toxic relationship or job or environment or thing that we feel chained to. When in reality, the lesson in the Devil card is that these people can walk away whenever they want. If you'll notice, there are no chains binding them. I mean, there's a scary devil above them, but they could walk away. So this card is always a reminder that you feel chained by something, but actually you can leave. You can walk away. Don't stay around trying to transform this thing or any of these things. The answer here is to walk away and to leave something behind. But I do see that God is trying to bring you in some blessings. So if you felt like for a long time, like, where are my blessings? It's been nothing but trial after trial, suffering after suffering. Like, when is it going to end? The message I'm getting from the Six of Pentacles is, God saying, well, I have some things I want to bring you, but I don't have the ability to bring them to you until you're in the right environment for it. You can't plant a banana tree, for example, in Oklahoma. The weather it wouldn't work. So God wants to give you a banana tree, but you've got to move to the environment that suits that gift that he's trying to bring you so that it will prosper. Hope that analogy makes sense. Okay, let's flip over the oracle cards. So we have abundance and penury, or lack of abundance. We have creativity and destructiveness, love and indifference, stability and instability. It's interesting. So I do feel that with this Queen of Wands kind of ending your tarot cards here, the line of tarot cards here, you all are extremely creative individuals. I feel like it almost feels like that's been blocked, though, by the environment that you're in. And the focus has been more on these sort of material things, like having material security, maybe staying in a job that doesn't suit you just because the security of like knowing how the job works and knowing what the paychecks look like. So I'll just stay here because of this. There's this fear of, well, I don't want to lack. For some of you, you're even staying in a relationship that really isn't for you for whatever reason. Perhaps this Devil card represents a toxic relationship or marriage. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It could be with parents or someone significant in your life, definitely, that has a lot of influence in your life. But it's almost like the emotions and the feelings from that relationship died a long time ago, and it's been toxic for quite some time. But because of your kind of fear or insecurity of having instability in your life, you stick around in it, you stay there, because that to you would be easier than having to walk away and then deal with what's to come after I leave this relationship. What am I going to have to deal with? What pieces will I have to pick up? And the fear of that. So a lot of you, I feel like, God is really calling you to move to a different city, move out of state, move to a different country. If you can't move like that, then it definitely needs to be a metaphorical or a spiritual move where there's certain things you're cutting out of your life or no longer engaging in order to get you to your creative power. Because with Queen of Wands, I do feel like I'm seeing for you all that God really wants to bring you like the big home with the fun parties, or the beautiful artwork that you create, or the wonderful relationships you'll have with your children. I mean, anything associated with kind of breathing in life and just stopping to smell the flowers and being in this creative flow, whatever it is you create. God's wanting to put you on that throne, but the environment doesn't suit it. Okay, let's look at some of our other oracle cards. We have Mars in Taurus, and it says defense. Venus in Capricorn, which says convention. Now that Venus in Capricorn, Venus is a planet of love and relationships as well as our values. Now Capricorn is not so emotional. It's not so lovey-dovey. It's all about, well, what makes sense and what's the most stable. And that's exactly what a lot of you are caught in. And perhaps you all are single and have been single for a long time, but as you've been looking for a new relationship, you're completely focused on the convention and the what makes sense and not focused on the emotions involved in the relationship. Is there passion in the relationship? Is there romance? So there's definitely a blocking of the emotions. And this Mars in Taurus, Mars is all about conquering things. And Taurus is all about our money and our finances and kind of the material things. And so that's kind of what you have been focused on conquering for a long time. But Taurus is also a very slow moving and stubborn energy. Taurus doesn't change its mind. It just keeps going. Once it makes the plan and decides what it's going to do, that's what it's going to do, slowly and steadily. So for a lot of you, I think that, you know, this change that God's calling on you to make to get you out of this sort of dark, suffering energy, he's acknowledging that he knows it's hard because you all are the type of people that really like make a plan and stick to it. And even if the emotions aren't there, even if you're miserable, even if this or even if that, we're just going to keep doing it. We're just going to keep doing the same thing. What's that? The definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That kind of comes to mind here. Okay, let's look at our moon card. Oh, wow. New moon in Taurus. So much Taurus energy here. And it says prosperity lies ahead. That's the Six of Pentacles and this Queen of Wands. It lies ahead. It's coming to you, or it's already waiting for you on the other side of all of this. And then we have faith in your dreams. A lot of you shut off your ability to dream based on what you went through. And, you know, in the story of Job, Job almost reached that point as well. I mean, for him, he had the dream life and it was all shattered. And it would have been very easy for him to lose his faith in God and lose faith in the idea that he would ever have a good life again. He could have convinced himself that God obviously hates me. I'm just destined to be miserable, so I'm just going to accept it. But he didn't. He never lost his faith. And God doesn't want you to lose your faith either. There are some creative dreams that you can and will accomplish as soon as the stage is set right for your kind of entrance into this, as soon as your environment kind of cleans itself up. And for some of you, it could be related to health issues and diet, because Taurus is a lot about our food intake and all of that. But walking away from something, it's almost like you have to jump into the instability in order to capture the stability. That's going to be the key for you all, just like North Node in Scorpio. In order to gain that stability, that happiness, and that joy that you want, you have to relinquish yourself and surrender to the unknown and the unstable and cut some cords here. All right, let's look at your surrender cards. It says, surrender your need to always be right and surrender to prayer. Two beautiful cards for the story of Job. Just like in the story of Job, his three friends, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, as I call them, or his own mental activity, were like, well, it's got to be this. So God must be unjust, or you must be bad. It's one of the two. It's one of the two. And they wouldn't back down. When Job knew, I mean, especially by the end of the story, he even asked them, he's like, you guys just go away. You're not helping. And he surrendered to prayer. I just want to talk to God. I just want to pray. And so there's something in your life that, yes, logically, mentally, it's easy for you to work out in your head why you shouldn't do it or why you should do it. And there is a stubbornness here. There's a defensiveness around it as well. because there's some sort of insecurity hidden in all of this where you do feel the need to defend your actions, to defend why you are in a toxic environment or in an unhappy situation. If someone were to ask you, why don't you just get out? There would be something in you that would be like, well, no, I can't just get out because of this, this, or that. So God's asking you to kind of surrender this need to be right and surrender to prayer. It says, give yourself over completely to prayer. When you pray from your heart, you will be heard throughout the universe, and answers and support will arrive. Beautiful. Okay, the last card is from my Miracles Now deck. Wow, and it says, dissolve all boundaries with love. Dissolve the boundaries. Walk away. Just because you're going to leave a relationship or leave an environment or walk away from a marriage or walk away from a job, it doesn't mean that you have to do it with drama and hatred and anger. You don't have to self-sabotage, right, in order to leave something. You all might be the type that have such a hard time or don't quite know how to leave something without the chaos that you don't leave it because you're so scared. I'm just going to stay here and stay here, but you end up self-sabotaging to where when eventually God or the universe pushes you out of that situation, it was so much more chaotic and dramatic than it ever needed to be. You can dissolve these boundaries. You can walk away from things. You can end things in your life, and you can do it with love and without any fear of a chaotic energy or trauma following or trailing behind it. And so that's how God wants you to approach everything in your environment now, as you're kind of looking it over and deciding what brings you joy and what no longer fulfills you, and how to remove those things from your life, but don't remove it by torturing yourself. Do it with love. Don't do it by being harsh or being emotionally detached in order to make it easier to say goodbye. Do it with love, okay? Leave a comment below. Let me know how you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, or an ongoing maybe weekly series. I'm not sure how everyone is enjoying it, so let me know in the comments, and let me know how this pile applied to you. Is this love life, work life? I'm really curious to know. I so enjoyed talking with you all today. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this reading for you, and I will see you in the next video. Love you. Bye. Hi, pile number 2. I hope you enjoyed the story about Job, and I can't wait to see how God wants to point out this story in your own life and how you relate to Job and what advice he would like to offer you as you move forward and conquer 2021 and beyond. So let's start with the tarot, and then we'll get into the oracle cards. Okay, we have the Fool. Love this card. So this is some air energy, some Uranus energy. We have 8 of Pentacles, Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus energy, as well as Queen of Pentacles. So more Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus energy. And then we have the 7 of Wands. Okay, I'm going to be honest, you guys. For group number 2, this feels much lighter. The energy here feels much, much lighter than group number 1. And I feel like the main thing God's wanting to talk to you about is your ability to persevere, your ability to conquer. This feels like a younger energy to me. Maybe you guys are actually younger individuals, or maybe your spirit is just there's a young-heartedness to this reading, to where it doesn't feel like you have, really, haven't really experienced the same sort of trials and suffering that like Job went through. And perhaps that's not true. Perhaps you guys did go through some really dark stuff. If you did, then it's definitely washed away from your energy, because like I said, everything feels really light and fresh here. This feels like the first part of Job's story, where God is introducing us to Job and talking to us about what a good man he is, and how he's always done the right thing, and how God really loves him. This feels like that young beginning of the story energy. But God is definitely wanting to prepare you for your future. He's going to be working with you on your ability to persevere. Now, he doesn't want to scare you, because you're not going to have to persevere through something as tragic and horrid as like what Job did. But Job is definitely a lesson of perseverance. So many of us would have ended our lives after going through what he went through, right? But Job persevered through. He remained alive. He remained in prayer. He remained, living and breathing, which is more than a lot of us would have done in that situation. So that's kind of what God's working with you on, specifically in your career. Now, for a lot of you with this full energy, you guys are in something new. Something new has started, something fresh, whether it's a new idea, maybe you've recently made a move, maybe it's a new relationship, it could be a new career idea. For a lot of you, I do feel like it has to do with your career goals or your financial goals or something. You're really like working very hard, and you're going to be persevering through whatever it is you're working on in order to claim your throne as the Queen of Pentacles. So you could be entrepreneurs or in college, or I don't know, there's some new fresh spark that's here, and God wants, he's proud of you, and he's blessing you during this time. So the main lesson here would be, especially if you guys may be anxiety prone type of people, where I'm getting a really fresh young energy off the cards, because good things are coming towards you, and you may be in that anxiety mindset of when's the bad thing coming? When's the bad thing coming? And thinking about like the story of Job and wondering like, when is it my turn to be Job? I know it's coming. And God may have brought you here to say, hey, calm down. Nothing bad's going to be happening. I actually have some really good things in store for you over the next year. So just calm yourself down. Addison will tell you the energy feels young and fresh and light. And so, that could be why he pulled you into this reading. But we end here with the Seven of Wands, which is about perseverance and defending yourself to the world. A lot of times tarot readers say this card will come up when someone is applying for a job and sending out their application and going to lots of interviews, and kind of all these wands represent another interview where I have to prove myself and fight for myself. That is what you will be doing, but you've got this. Like, this is nothing that's going to weigh you down, and you're going to get the rewards from it very quickly. So don't put yourself in worst case scenario sort of thinking. Don't put yourself in anxiety-like thinking. Focus on enjoying what you have when you have it and persevering through to the next step. And you can worry about the destination when you get there. Okay, so let's take a look at, I have one last card I didn't flip over. How funny, I overlooked it. Okay, Two of Wands, and that's after the Seven of Swords. Two of Wands is a planning stage. This man has earned himself enough power. He's persevered through enough things to where he now has options at his fingertips, and he's kind of got the world in his hand, and he's looking and thinking, what do I want to do? I think I'm going to plan to do this, and then I'll plan to do that. You are, this year especially, you are going to be persevering through something that's going to give you more options, more freedom for yourself and your life. You're planning something. And so God doesn't want you to worry about your plans being thwarted or him making a deal with the devil to come and test you. He's really wanting to just encourage you and say, look, that's not the phase of life that you are in. You're in a great phase. Enjoy it. Okay, let's look at some oracle cards now. Freedom and servitude. That's exactly what I'm seeing here. What you guys are working on right now is going to be providing you freedom. It could be like, I want to work from home now so that I can live anywhere in the world that I want to. I want to work for myself so that I don't have to answer to a boss. Something like that. You're gaining your freedom. Look at this growth. Beautiful. We have the butterfly there and the seashell. We have betrayal. Now, these cards don't represent actual things happening to you. These represent the internal cycles that make us fearful, like servitude, betrayal, and then we have power. Wow. Okay, so there definitely is a fear here of betrayal as well as servitude, okay? But I do see you this year working towards your freedom and towards your power and your growth. Out of all the cards that are in this deck here that I have, I'm pretty sure pile 2 got all of the positive ones. You have one negative one, which is betrayal. And this is very similar to how Job kind of felt. I don't know if he really felt it or he was definitely questioning it, but he did feel betrayed in a sense by God. Or when people read the story of Job before dissecting it and understanding the metaphors and the symbolism, they do view it as a story of betrayal. Like, if God loved Job so much, why in the world is he going to let freaking Satan come in and just destroy him? Like, what a betrayal. So you do have a fear of that. Maybe that's why you are predicting kind of worst case scenarios. You're not able to see the positive outcome that you're headed towards because you do feel that at some point it's all going to be ripped away, it's all going to be taken. And God's really wanting to come through to say, no, not for you, not for you, not at this time in your life. You're growing, you're gaining an inner power, and you're creating freedom for yourself in your outer world, in your outer reality, which is gorgeous. Okay. It says, be bold and make the first move, cardinal moon, as well as a new start is coming. And that is that Fool energy. So maybe this past year was really dark, and this freshness on these cards represents the 12 months ahead from now, and how they're going to be so much fresher and lighter than they've been in the past for you. And how, there's really going to be a lot to get excited about. And as soon as you get out of any sort of fear or anxiety mode that you have and start just making those bold moves and worrying about the outcome when the outcome arrives, you're going to get to your freedom and your power even more quickly. Okay, we have Venus in Scorpio, and it says secrets. And then we have Venus in Taurus, and it says romance. So 2 Venus cards. Interesting. There's some sort of romantic thing at play here with all of this. I may clarify that with some tarot cards here in a little bit. Let me flip over my surrender deck, and then we'll see how that ties in. Okay, we have surrender to success and surrender the drama. This says, no matter how emotionally charged the situation, remain calm and don't contribute to the drama. Staying centered will help resolve the issue more quickly. And on surrender to success, we have, you are ready to experience abundance. Okay, you're in the abundance stage of the Job story. Don't look back at previous roadblocks or difficulties. Leap into an exciting new world of possibilities. You know, that reminds me of how at the end of Job's story, God blessed him, and it ends the story there as a happily ever after. And there's 2 things that could have happened. I mean, we could imagine either Job received his blessings and decided to fully enjoy them, and he fully put his trust back in God and didn't have any worries about the future, or he could have received that abundance but spent the rest of his life thinking, okay, when's the next deal with Satan coming? When's it coming? I know it's coming. I know the betrayal's coming. When's it coming? And he would have never enjoyed his abundance. And so that surrender to success, this is God's message to you that this is your time to experience abundance. So don't focus on, kind of the scary things that may have happened in the past, or scary things that maybe are to come in the future. Like, he's really wanting to say, like, just relax, just breathe. Like, there's some really great things coming. Now, with this surrender to the drama and both of these Venus cards, romance as well as secrets, and they're both on the Scorpio Taurus spectrum, this is going to, I feel like this year for you is going to be more, or should be more focused on your career and your kind of life purpose, sort of creative energies and what you're wanting to conquer. Like, this is really a year that's about you and a focus on yourself and what you're going to do in the outside world. I do feel like there's some sort of relationship drama tied up in it. That may have to do with the heaviness from the previous year or years, but God's really wanting you to pull away from that energy and focus more on yourself, and the relationship things will work out as you focus on how to create more freedom in your life, how to increase your inner power, how to create growth. What new things are you going to learn this year? What new things are you going to try? And not allow all of your extra time and all your free time get sucked into relationship sort of dramas. Okay, let's take a look at the Miracles Now deck. And it says, let me show you the card because I think they're so pretty. When I've overshared, I simply say, wait, why am I talking? Oh, that sounds like the Secrets card. Okay, so just like Job in his story questioned why he even had his friends come over. I mean, after the end of that conversation, he just wanted them gone. They didn't help him at all. They just frustrated him. In fact, by the end of the conversation, his friends were accusing him of being a bad person. Like, well, you must be really terrible if God's doing these things to you. And I bet this is exactly what Job was thinking. When I've overshared, I simply say, wait, why am I talking? So there could be, with the secrets and the romance, there could be, and this betrayal thing, there could be some issues, like I've been saying, around your romantic life or your one-on-one relationships with friends or with family and other people's opinions and views of this relationship or of your love life in general. And so God's wanting to remind you that the most important person for you to be sharing and communicating these thoughts with is really yourself and with God. If you remain strong in your faith and if you believe in your own inner power, then kind of what others are doing around you or others' opinions around you aren't going to phase you as much, and they shouldn't, especially for this year. This is about freshness and new beginnings. So don't allow other people's opinions about, I don't know, whether like, oh, you should be focusing on getting married this year. Oh, you want to be single forever? Or don't you think your life's out of balance? I don't know. Because you're harnessing your own inner power this year and your own growth. And so you can have those conversations with people, but remember to create boundaries between, am I sharing a healthy amount of information, or is this becoming unhealthy? How much I'm sharing with others, how much I'm exposing, my personal life and my own secrets. Am I exposing those things to the right people, or am I overdoing it? This could even have to do with your social media interactions and what you're posting on your social media pages. Are you inviting judgment from others through it? Are you inviting chaos? And if so, why? Like, what are ways you can feel more free in your life and have more power in your life, okay? And not need the drama and the input of others constantly, okay? So I'm wishing you the best of luck for the next 12 months. Your story really looks great. You're at the abundance part of the story of Job, which is the best spot to be in. I mean, not really, but really it feels that way. So whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, I'd be very curious if you'd comment it down below. If you've got a business or your own YouTube channel, I'd love to know. And I love you all, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Hi Group 3, and welcome to your reading. I hope you enjoyed listening to the story of Job, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. How did you take the story? What kind of insights did you gain from it? Or if there's any information to the story you'd like to add, leave that down in the comments below just to help spread the info and enlighten everyone else. And I can't wait to see kind of what God wants to point out to you in the story of Job and how it might relate to your life right now at this moment. So let's start with the tarot cards. Okay, we have 9 of Pentacles. It's interesting because in all 3 piles, earth energy, like that Taurus earthy energy I was talking, has been very prominent, which relates to the story of Job completely because he lost all the material to gain the spiritual. Okay, then we have 2 of Pentacles. Then we have the Tower moment. That's such a Job card, right? And then 9 of Swords. And we end with the Sun. Beautiful. All right. So it looks like you guys actually probably have the most similarities with Job's experience of all 3 groups, because I'm literally seeing Job's story play out right here before my eyes, where there's this immense abundance. You may have even had many different options of abundance, like I can get money here, I can get it there, I'm abundant in this, I'm abundant in that, just like Job was. And then all of a sudden there was this tower moment where everything was destroyed, it all imploded. You were you lost everything just like Job did, and then you were in this immense anxiety about the future. Even if you've kind of rebuilt a bit up to this point, it's kind of like, at the end of Job's story when God blesses him once again, Job, we don't know how Job went on to live. I mean, we could assume that God blesses him once again, restores everything, and then Job's happily ever after. But for a lot of us who would go through that type of experience, God would come back down and bless us, and we'd take the blessing, but then we'd live the rest of our life like this, like just looking over our shoulder, like, when is God going to make another deal with the devil? Like, when is it coming? So it definitely put you in a grieving and fearful sort of energy, because I don't think you were, no one ever expects the tower moment. It's always completely unexpected. There never seems to be a good explanation. There's no way to logically comprehend, which is the story of Job. And swords are all about this mental overthinking sort of energy. So I do feel like you've been stuck in, if you'll notice, this woman, she's looking over at the tower. Her face is facing this way. She's looking back on this past moment and she's analyzing, just like when Job had his friends over and they're all analyzing. Well, could it be this or could it be that? Maybe this is why this is happening. Maybe that, and seeking out, answers for it. When look, behind her on the other side of her is the sun. The sun is the happiest card in the tarot deck. But she can't see it because she's focused on trying to solve the equation of why this tower moment happened. And that's exactly why God brought you to this story. He's wanting to lead you into the sunshine, and he wants you to let go of trying to find the answers to why, and move forward. There's a big, bright, beaming, beautiful sun filled with little naked baby angels just waiting for you. And but you can't get to it unless you turn around. So maybe as we go into the other oracle cards, I can expand more on this story. So let's see. Let's start with these. Okay, we have greed and generosity. Now these cards represent kind of the life themes, kind of the difficult life themes and lessons that your life is focused on at the moment or because of these circumstances we've talked about. So greed and generosity, fear, that definitely resonates with that card, and justice and injustice. So for a lot of you, I'm feeling with that, this is like Libra energy to me, definitely. For a lot of you, this has to do with a divorce or a really terrible breaking down of a relationship that was unexpected. Maybe you found out the other person cheated. Maybe the other person ended the relationship abruptly, and perhaps finances and responsibilities were mixed up in this. Perhaps you all had children together, and through this breakdown of this relationship, you really saw kind of how greed can take over. Maybe this person isn't paying their child support. Maybe they screwed you over in the divorce settlement. Maybe they screwed you over on the lease contract you guys had with your apartment. Like maybe they gambled a lot of your money away. Who knows? But there's something here combined with that justice and injustice that it's like, yeah, there's no way to make sense of it. You were, in your mind, it's probably like, it could even have to do with work as well, getting passed up for a promotion or getting fired over something so like minuscule that you can't comprehend why, or refusing to give you the raise that you deserve. Who knows? But there's something that it's like you're trying to work it out instead of seeing this new opportunity to walk into. Because the fact is, they were greedy and it was unjust. And it's understandable that you would be fearful. But some things in life we don't get the answers to. Perhaps like Job in his story, perhaps you lost a lot of material in order to gain some sort of spiritual wisdom, whether that be a deeper empathy for others who are going through things like this, or you're cultivating your soul through these experiences, but that's still, it's not going to give you that sort of answer you're really seeking. But I don't see that this was really an unexpected thing. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't deserve this by any means. But God really wants you to focus on the future and the positive, and your own sunshine that's trying to shine down upon you. Get out of the snow, get out of that cold, dark place and walk into the sun. All right. We have Blue Moon, believe in the impossible, as well as New Moon in Virgo, a time to give rather than take. Beautiful. Now, the Virgo energy is all about the body and our own health. It's also in kind of taking care. Virgo is an energy that's of service to itself as well as to others. Some of you may be in like a nursing or hospital industries, like a doctor or something. But Virgo is also a very critical energy. Like it wants to find everything that's wrong and fix it. And so when we kind of take out the negative Virgo energy on ourselves, we can become very self-critical and very hateful towards our own selves. Just like Job's friends were being to him. He had all these horrible things happening to him, and his friends were coming to the conclusion that, well, you must have deserved it. Like, obviously you did this. You ticked God off. You must not be good enough. You must be a bad person or this or that. And that's why God's cursing you. So you may have done that a little bit to yourself over the past year. Like, oh, if I just would have been more like this, or if I just wouldn't have done that, and taken on this really critical role within towards yourself. And God's wanting you to stop that, because just like Job, there was nothing he could have done to avoid God and the devil making a deal. It's like sometimes things happen just because they happen. God knows the answers why, but we can't comprehend it. But no, there's nothing you could have done differently. And this new moon, this new beginning needs to be focused on how you can care and love for yourself and turn off that harsh inner critic within, and instead focus on believing in the impossible, believing in something impossible. And maybe we'll see what that is with the last few cards here. Okay, the surrender cards say, surrender the idea that you can fix someone. And the second one says, surrender defensiveness. So it says defensiveness is a sign of weakness. To communicate in a more empowered way, stay centered and hear someone out, and then offer a clear, non-defensive response. In the other card, it says it's time for a relationship to shift. It doesn't work to try to fix someone. Each person must be accountable for his or her own healing. This reminds me of that Virgo energy. Start focusing this Virgo energy of being of service and caring and healing towards yourself, instead of trying to give it out to everyone else, or instead of turning it into something kind of criticizing, and then with that surrender defensiveness card, this could all have to do with your own ideas on what has happened here in this Tower moment. And as you're looking back over it, you could still, whoever caused this Tower moment, for example, there could still be something in you that is defending kind of whoever caused that. Like, let's say if your job fired you and everyone around you is like, what? That doesn't make sense. They fired you for what? That makes no sense. And it really was unjust and unwarranted. You may still be kind of like, well, it wasn't, I mean, I'm sure they had their reasons. I'm sure it must be the right thing to do because they did it, and kind of defending this unjust situation. Maybe because you feel like everything will make more sense in your head if you just defend it, or think that you can come back to this tower and rebuild it and fix it. Let me just, instead of walking towards this sun, I'm gonna analyze this tower, and then I'm gonna go back over and I'll rebuild it, and then I'll move back in. Great, happily ever after, right? God's like, no. Those things were taken away for a reason, and you can't fix it, and there's no need to defend the people that did you wrong, and it's time to walk into your sunshine. Okay, we have Mercury and Aries, and it says restlessness. And then we have Moon in Gemini, and it says adaptability. Gemini is all about, well, we have Mercury and Gemini here, which are about really communicating. And Aries energy is about like starting something new. It's a fresh energy. It's the first sign of the zodiac. But there is a need, it's like there is a need to be adaptable here. I see that you're moving in towards that, because I do feel that this tower that you were living in, whatever it represents to you, you were living in it for quite some time. Probably took a long time to build up. You probably moved in, got very comfortable, very settled. And in your mind, you were going to live in that tower until the day you died. And that's that. And so when it was ripped away, I think it's been very hard for you to think about other options for your future. Because in your mind, no, that was my option. That was my only option. That's the only thing I wanted. So you haven't yet been able to open your mind, Moon in Gemini, and be adaptable and think about what other possibilities kind of lie ahead for you. And I do feel that you guys need to be doing a bit more with yourself, because, like Job in the story, when he kind of lost everything, he really got pulled down into this dark energy, and it did make him quite restless. And I think it even made him he started going a little bit mad, which anyone would in that situation, obviously. I mean, we can't really make a fair comparison between Job's life and what we're going through. But there is a restlessness here where it's like, because you're not doing a lot with your body or your tasks, or there's not like a lot of movement, okay? I'm seeing that restless energy expressing itself through your mind and your overthinking. So God's wanting you to try and add more to your to-do list during the day, or start a workout routine, or get a new job, or something that's going to kind of fill your day with more energetic activity, so that way your mind isn't so restless, because your mind can't really be adaptable when it's overworking itself trying to solve something. The way you can relieve yourself is through like a good healthy routine, which is a very Virgo energy. A good healthy routine, a good diet, good exercise, a good schedule for the day, and really create something enjoyable for yourself. Okay, from the Miracles Now deck, we have to relinquish control, I simply let loose. and allow myself to be more childlike. That's beautiful, because Virgo is all about, it's a very controlling and critical sort of energy, because it wants to have all its ducks in a row, everything just right. We've got the schedule, we've got the meal prep, we've got, I mean, that's a Virgo energy, which can be expressed positively or negatively when it's overdone. So I do feel that in the past, you all expressed that Virgo energy on the more negative end of the spectrum. And now in this new phase, you're learning to relinquish control, surrender to the universe, and allow yourself to be more childlike. Just as Job had to relinquish control of every single thing he owned. He could not control what was happening to him, and he had to surrender to that and understand that I have no control over this. I can't do anything about it. And he had to wait until he was given the opportunities and given his new blessings and this, that, or the other. And so this Sun card is very much, the Sun represents the inner child. And that's exactly what you're looking away from. And so instead, I think this year what God really wants you to do is to connect with your inner child. Your inner child doesn't criticize itself. Your inner child isn't serious all the time. Your inner child isn't focused on control, right? Those are all like things we learn to do as adults. So God's really wanting this to be a phase of self-love for you and walking into your own sunshine, your own abundance, your own childlike, adaptable, flexible, easygoing, but self-loving sort of energy. And to recognize too that you're not going to get a true explanation that's going to satisfy you for this Tower moment. So the best thing you can do is what Job did, and just walk away and don't look back. God's bringing you new opportunities, new blessings. Step into those and leave that past situation, whatever it was, leave it behind. So I would love it if you would comment below. Let me know how this resonated with you and what's going on in your life. Is this about love life, work? What is it? I would love to know. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye.